Welcome to the Ben Buzz. I'm Benny King, and we have a very special episode for you today with two former guests, Isaiah.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
Of course, man. And Quinten.
Hello.
Yeah. And today we're going to dive right into all of our histories of religious trips and how it has not only given us a better understanding of ourselves as Christians, but has given us unforgettable memories that will hold dear for years to come. Now, Isaiah was on the channel before and talked a bit about his testimony and journey, but as for you, Quinten, we talked about movies on your last appearance, so could you give us a brief summary of, not only your journey, but your testimony as a whole?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to say thank you for having me back. Good to be back. And yeah, when I was a kid, I was never really into the whole church thing or going to church camp with a group of friends. I was never really into that. My family has never really been that religious, and I remember a couple times in school, we had a couple opportunities to go to church during the day, and it never really hit with me. I never thought it was fun, and I was out of it for a lot of years. And then through a couple connections I made in school, I actually met Isaiah here, and it was probably about actually almost a year, I would say, that it took him convincing me to finally go to his church service.
Wow.
I know. But then
About the same for me.
yeah, it takes a while, but it was
Right.
it was worth it, I would say now. But I showed up that Sunday morning and I liked the church music. I liked the worship band. I would say it was like rock music, pop music. It was more upbeat than the traditional church hymn or like gospel music almost. And Bob, the pastor, now retired sadly, and
Yeah.
I loved his messages. They were really easy to understand. He almost translated it like in a way that we would understand, and I loved it. And I continued on about that cycle, going to Sunday worship, just loving it, almost getting myself in a routine almost. Like if I missed a Sunday after that, I felt like almost bad.
Yeah.
And then it was towards the end of the school year, and Isaiah brought up to me a really great way to get involved. And that's actually what we're here to talk about today, that trip and many other opportunities we've all had.
Right. And I think that really just, going to church is obviously great, and we'll talk about Bible study later and how much that really has impacted us. But, one of the really underrated parts that is really huge at that just building yourself up as a Christian are these mission trips, and are these great trips, not only just for yourself as a Christian, but the bonding experiences you get with fellow Christians, which I'm sure you'll be able to attest to later, where it feels like you're like so connected, and it really feels so heartfelt. And Isaiah, you're one of the best examples of that, as you've been to several places at this point, and I understand you've been to Costa Rica, and just across the board just seems, very interesting, and, I'm very interested in how that really affected you as a Christian as a whole, and just, how it felt with the bonding experience, and just, the experience as a whole. I'm really interested, Isaiah.
Well, I'm excited to talk about it later on. There's been so many opportunities God has given us, and first of all, thank you for having me back.
Of course, man.
I've been really excited when I heard we were doing this, and these trips are truly an amazing experience. I think when you can not only have your friends at your side and have a shared goal of wanting to serve God, and making it a priority to share that with your family when you get back, and to just lift God's amazing hand in his work in your life when you can travel somewhere and do it for someone else. That's special, and I'm excited to hear some of Quinten's experiences today as well.
Right, 100%, man. Right, and Isaiah, a guy like you, has certainly been in the church for years and has really been doing these mission trips for years, and has been an inspiration to all of us, and as you said earlier, got you into the church and really inspires us all to do things like these mission trips. And Quinten, as this is kind of your first year really going to church and really getting into, everything that's been Isaiah's been like talking to you about, how has this really been? I mean, it's kind of your first experience, right? Your first summer on all these trips. How has this been? And how is it, the bonding, like really doing work in other communities? Like, how does it feel? And, how are these bonding experiences? How has it been for you overall in your growth as a Christian?
Yeah, looking back on it now, I'm really grateful that God gave me the opportunity to go on all of these trips. But if I hate to admit this, but that very first trip, I hated at first. At least the first couple days I did. Yeah. Because I was told that, like, the entire week we'd be pretty much doing manual labor and, like, we wouldn't have our phones. And, like, for me as, like, a teenager who's, like, I would say addicted to the phone at least a little bit.
Right.
That was, like, really hard to do. But we went to Kansas City. We were on the border between Kansas City, Missouri and Kansas City, Kansas. And we stayed at a local church, which we were grateful that they let us stay there. Wasn't the most comfortable place to stay, but a bed was still a bed, you know.
Right.
And we worked at a women's and children's homeless shelter.
Really?
I know. And I personally have never seen, I would say, poverty in that way, because I've driven through the city before and you see it out on the streets, but, like, when you're inside that homeless shelter and seeing how people are living, it almost makes you feel like you're taking everything that your life has for granted.
Oh, I know. I get that.
Do you feel that too sometimes? Like all the stuff that we're privileged for?
Yeah, I definitely do. And, you know, whenever you're going through a big city, like, I mean, I have memories going through it with my dad where, like, he says, like, to put, like, the money in your sock, like, to really, like, protect it. But, like, to think about those people, how, I mean, a lot of people are raised that, like, those homeless people are, like, dangerous or, like, you don't want to go near them. And even though it ends up being true or, you know, they need money for, you know, whatever it is. And it does suck, but it's, like, to think about the humanity aspect can be sometimes challenging, where it's easier to just brush it off as, oh, yeah, they're just going to use it on drugs, or, yeah, oh, they're just, you know, washed up people. But then you're talking about children. You're talking about women. Like, it's really sad how we kind of look at those people. And maybe there are people like that, but it's kind of sad how we kind of view them in that way. And I definitely agree with what you're saying there. I definitely feel that, Quinten.
Yeah, something that I remember vividly is there were two groups. One of them was painting a downstairs hallway because, like, the walls were falling off, and, like, there was a part of the wall that, like, was literally, like, tearing off. And the other group was upstairs working on a room, very dirty room with bunk beds. And I was on the downstairs crew for half the week, and we were next to, like, a game room of sorts. And I remember there were kids in that room about my age at the time, like, I think I was like 16, almost 17, and they were having fun doing things like they were playing ping pong. I think they had like a PS3 or 4 in there or something, playing video games.
Really?
Like, they were doing stuff that I did to have fun, and they didn't even look like it was affecting them. And I was like almost staring at it like in disbelief. Because if I was in that situation, I don't know how I could find happiness like that. Right. But it was very heartwarming to see, like, keeping hope and how God gives you hope and all that stuff.
Right. And when you see people like that, and, you know, you think, like, oh, they're, like, going to be, like, depressed all the time, or, oh, they're going to be moping around, or, you know, being emotional. And obviously you'd get that because, I mean, these people are in immense poverty. But to see and be like, oh, they're kids just like me, I feel like that really hits home, too, where it's just they were just born into bad situations, where I feel like you said earlier with taking things for granted, where it's like, man, like, they're here and they're like, the stuff that they were given, the cards they were dealt, not great, but they still seem grateful, they still seem joyful, and they're still having a good time, where it's like, man, like, I need to do a better job not taking things for granted, or just being, like, having more gratitude towards all the blessings that God has given us in life, because it's like, man, like, if these kids can have, like, so much less and be in poverty, but they can still have a smile on their face, they can still have a good time, then what's my excuse? And I think that's really reminiscent of, you know, all the mission trips as a whole, and how it sort of improves you and how it sort of opens your eyes to be like, man, and you really realize all the gifts that God really gives you that most people don't even think about.
Yeah, I know, because, like, during church, you read the Bible, you read God's word, and, like, like, I love that part, but, like, whenever you're actually out there and you see the impact God has on people, like, the people that were running the facility, how it was like God called them to do that, the people that were, like, living in the facility, that God gave them a place to stay until they, like, get back on their feet. Right. Like, it's crazy, almost. And that trip, a lot of it was working on that homeless shelter, but the other half of it was us worshiping back at the church. And that built fellowship between me, and Isaiah was there as well, actually, and a lot of other people that were there as well. And this one thing that we did, I still remember it vividly to this day, and I bawled this night. They had brought out a wooden cross, and they gave all of us a note card and a pen, and they said, write down one thing you would like to give to God. Now, before this, Isaiah had told me about that they might do something like this since he's had a little bit of experience. And whenever he told me that, I almost laughed at the fact, because I thought, like, you're writing something down on a piece of paper. Like, you know, how is that anything? How is that life-changing, you know?
Right, exactly, yeah.
And we did that night, and I wrote down what I wanted to give to God, and I was just sitting there almost crying to myself, because, like, just saying you want to give it over to God is one thing, but, like, we physically nailed what we wanted to give over on the cross, and, like, a lot of people were crying that night, and, like, I remember after that, I just sat in my bed and I prayed. Can you imagine doing something like that? Like, physically giving something over to God?
No. That's really interesting. And was there something else that they did with the cross as well?
No, not really. Not for that one. But later in the week, they did another activity where in the Bible, Jesus showed humanity by washing the disciples' feet.
Right.
And I think it was on the last night or the night before the last night, our pastor Bob and Isaiah took turns washing our feet while everybody else put their hands on your back and all prayed for you. Like, hearing the words that people had to say about me, and, like, doing that to others, people crying, seeing how much God loves you and other people love you, is just, it was such a beautiful experience. And I didn't really appreciate it much then, but looking back on it now, I feel like God put me on that mission trip for a reason.
That's great that you had that experience of Isaiah and Bob and them washing your feet, because that was also the final meeting of Bible study where they did that as well. And like you said, to hear all the kind things and where, like, everyone prays for you, and it's, like, really interesting. It was a little difficult for me because my feet are pretty ticklish, but I got through it, and they were laughing at me a lot, but I got through it. And I was kind of bummed out because I was like, man, I wish Quinten was here, like, you know, but it's great that you still got to have that experience, and on a mission trip, no less, which is far more than what I got. And how was that mission trip for you and Isaiah? And not just being on the receiving end like Quinten was, and, like, having his feet washed, like, how was it to pray for these people, and, like, you hear Quinten and you hear me to, like, have, like, that type of impact from you and Bob, and, like, everything that you do for us, and, like, the way that you guys did things, and, like, the way that you really made us feel things, and, like the cross thing, it's just really, it really did a number on us. And, like, how do you guys do this, and, like, how does it feel? And, you know, I mean, overall, like, were there things that, like, Bob did or, like, people did for you in the past that really made you feel that level, and, like, what really inspires you, and, like, overall, how was this experience for you?
Well, the first good step in any plan is to communicate with one another firsthand. Something that I always found as a gift between me and Bob, the youth pastor, was me and him always would sit down and we would talk about what was going to happen. You know, we kind of brain dumped, you know, we brainstormed and we prayed about it, you know, putting God first before we started spewing out our own ideas, to have him at the center. And what is this going to mean? It wasn't about us. Yes, we were leading it,
right.
And I got very honored and privileged to wash my friends' feet and to pray over my friends, who, some of them it was for the first time, some of them it was for their fifth time. Each experience to me was very, very different and unique than the last, and certainly needed in my life. But I think when me and him were talking about these different activities, we thought to ourselves, you know, what does it show in the Bible, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not as big of an expert on the Bible as I wish I was, like my pastor was. Right. So having his mentor and, like, guidance on what those kind of things should be is really where we came up with those ideas. I was more of just a humbled spectator who was helping more. So I just loved seeing the emotion that was being poured out of people. I loved that they seemed to be getting it and seemed to be clicking. Right. When people were really taking it serious and really trying to let God into their hearts, like the nailing on the cross activity. I mean, that's a very, very literal thing that you kind of do, but also spiritually. You know, when we first hear about a nailing on the cross, we hear it and we might see it on the internet a few times and think to ourselves, oh, that looks kind of cool. You know, I don't really think that's going to get you. But something about when they start playing some music and you kind of think to yourself, man, I'm really holding a lot back from God. You know, like I'll share on my first mission trip, which Quinten's was Kansas City, Kansas. Mine was going to Knoxville, Tennessee. And I was a little bit younger at the time, but same setup. We were in a church and staying overnight, but they had another nailing on the cross activity. And there was a little bit more staff at the time, pre-COVID, right? And I ended up bawling. Like, I'm not much of a crier, I'm not much of a baller, but I'm talking like really bawling. Like, I got 3 different fluids running down my face. You know, I got snot in the nose and salty tears and anything else you can think of. And it got so powerful to when we were done with the nailing on the cross activity. It was the same process as what you did. Right. I ended up going into a separate room with Bob after we met and had church time. And I sat in the pews for about 2 hours. Maybe longer. I don't really know the exact time frame, but it was at least a very good amount of time. And Bob sat right next to me and I ended up just crying on his shoulder. And it was at a point in my life where my parents were in the middle of divorcing again, which I talked about in the podcast last time. My life was just kind of full of chaos. And for the first time that summer, that was a big place of peace where I could sit here and just start letting it out. And I had realized, oh my goodness, I'm harboring so many feelings that I'm not talking to people about. I'm holding back from God. I wasn't lifting it up in prayers. I wasn't trying to communicate it to my pastors or anybody. And it just came overflowing kind of like a volcano, you know, and I ended up just really getting saved in a way to me. I ended up just really praying for longer than I can remember. And it was just so relieving to like cry that out, you know what I mean? Like a cry night kind of. And that was my moment of why I started to realize these trips mean something.
Right. In that trip, were you, do you remember like what grade you were in or like how old you were? Do you remember any of that?
Yeah, I think I went on that trip in 2021, I want to say. It might have even been earlier, so I would say around 12 to 13-ish, so still pretty young.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember, like, I mean, for years when we had sleepovers at, you know, my dad's place or, like, whatever it was, where we would just have deep talks, where, like, it was almost like when you were talking to me and, like, I'd, like, felt like I was very ungrateful for everything going on in my life just because you would be talking and I was like, oh, like, dang, that really sucks, man, like. And there were several hours around where I was just like, dang, that's crazy. Dang, that's awful. I'm like, geez, I got to look in the mirror and, like, be more appreciative for the things I have. And just the fact that you came out to be the Christian that you are today and to influence so many. I mean, me and Quinten on this couch, but, I mean, you know, Riley, who was on the podcast last episode. I mean, there's so many people that have been influenced by you and have taken a part in any of these mission trips or in the feet washing or in any of these group activities where you really feel it. And did anything in your past like that really trigger you to want to do things like that for others? I mean, it really is like, where did this come from? Because it's like when we like talk about your past, it's like it really sucks, but like the person that emerged is like so spectacular. And maybe that's why through all the hardships where it's just like you really just elevate everyone around you, and we're grateful for that. Was there anything like that for you?
Yeah, so there's a great way that a friend of mine, I don't remember their name now, but there was a friend I had back in the day who told me this very simply. He told me that you can be one of two people when it comes to your hardships or traumas. You can either become the trauma or you can be the person who's opposite of the trauma. And I really made a decision once I kind of let everything out and really started to understand God, and this is including me, but this is it's part of something bigger. And I said to myself, I felt called. I felt God had really touched me when I was sitting in those pews and crying, and then moving forward from there where I'm like, I can't do this alone anymore. I can't carry this weight that I'm feeling every single day up to this point where I know I'm lying. I know I'm not being someone I want to be. I know I'm scared. I know that I'm someone who is absolutely being destroyed by the weight of my sins and the weight of the sins that others are committing around me. And I think that transition to understanding that I'm not alone, you know, that's a huge thing we need to open our eyes to, is that you're not alone when you're with God and when you turn your life to Him. you have him at your backside ready to defend off against anything that's happening. And when you can really tap into that, and that's when I started to learn, like, hey, I want to do this with others. I watched my pastor, and he was such a big role model for me. When I saw the impact he made on other people, and I have to admit, there was a bit of selfishness at the time where I was like, this might get me some attention. I had a little bit of those weakness moments where I was like, oh, this seems kind of cool. Everyone really likes the leaders. But once I got humbled by it and realized, oh, this isn't about me. This is about the connection to God. This is about what other people are going to get. Because I already gained so much just being around that community. And that's what I talked about last time. I thought that was awesome.
Right. Yeah. And for the past few minutes or so, and we had gotten into it on your episode as well about all the impacts you've had on others, and especially with these mission trips, it can really make you feel that. And Quinten, earlier we were talking about sort of the hand of God and how you actually got to experience how these people are being helped, and like we were talking about those children and women in poverty. And like, did you really feel like you were making a difference? Did you feel like you were really helping people? How did that really affect you as a whole?
Yeah, because for the first half of the week, we were working downstairs, like painting a wall and stuff. I didn't really see the impact on that looking now that I did, because like that wall was falling apart. It got to a point where we were tearing half the wall off. Like, it was bad.
Really?
But then halfway during the week, I moved upstairs and we were working on a dorm room. I wasn't there when we were cleaning it, but I heard from a lot of people that it was bad. Like, really dirty, really trashed, everything.
Right.
Whenever I was there, we were starting to paint and refurbish the room. So I was in charge of painting the bathroom. And I had a lot of good talks, a lot of personal talks with one of the nice women in charge of the place. And we were painting, like, everything. We were having a good time. We were making it just look nice. And towards the end of the week, I'm not sure who, but someone informed us that once we were leaving, they were going to move a family into the room that we just cleaned.
Really?
I know. To me, that was crazy. It's like...
That really makes you feel like the difference, like, almost instantly.
I know. It's like there's now, like, even hopefully this room should like be clean now, and like there possibly could be a family living there right now in a hopefully clean room and living there instead of on the street. But like, it felt like, I would say that's the first time in my life I've felt a direct impact on helping someone of that scale. And I'm just grateful that I was given the opportunity to.
That's really powerful. And you talked about how when you were fixing up the wall downstairs where you didn't feel like you were making as much of a difference, where now you look at it and you're like, yeah, that wall was chipped, it was run down, but you didn't feel that impact. But the fact that you not only cleaned up that room and the bathroom, but then to be like, oh, like someone moved in like right after that, and to think that it was something like we did, like we helped them get to that spot. And I think that's really powerful. And I mean, certainly not only makes you feel good, makes you feel like, man, like this is really like the impact of God, and really having that firsthand. Because you hear stuff at church about like these great like stories and like, yeah, and then we did this, and then this family, and then in the Bible you hear all these great stories of people doing things for other people. But to really experience that as a Christian and on a mission trip, no less, really has to be such a powerful experience, Quinten.
Yeah, I'm not sure where in the Bible it talks about this, but I know it talks about this a lot, about one of the main things as Christians, you don't have to do this, but like, is being the hands of God, doing work that God calls you to do. And I feel like by the end of that trip, I was demonstrating one of the values of being a good Christian, of doing work that I was sent here to do. Like, I was supposed to be on that mission trip for a reason. And, you know, it was just a really great experience, and I'm just glad that I was able to fulfill God's purpose that I was there for.
Well, it certainly seems like that mission trip was a great experience for both of you, and I'm sure all the people that you went with, as you said, it was such a great bonding experience, where not only you guys said a couple instances where you bawled out or cried, but like a bunch of other of your mates as well. But I mean, not only this trip, but one of you, I think Quinten earlier mentioned that there were several trips as well that you guys went on. How were those experiences?
Yeah, the second trip, was summer camp. Camp Adventure was the location we went to. Mm-hmm. And the really cool experience about that was everyone in our youth group, it was kind of our big hoorah. It's what we all wanted to look forward to. Mm. It's pretty self-explanatory for those who haven't done one. You go to a summer camp for a week and you stay in cabins usually, and you get as a counselor, you'll have a group of campers come under you. Our group happened to be primarily leading middle schoolers. So anyone from going into 6th grade to going into 9th grade was going to our camp. And we had pretty good attendance. One of the roles I played when I first started was I was a camper, but I was also a band member. So I got to go do the activities, but I also got to see the behind the scenes of being a worship leader and kind of playing bass on stage. But as the years progressed, I ended up becoming a director. So I kind of skipped the role of being a counselor. What I really loved most about being a director was my pastor had talked to me about this a couple months before. I believe it was also 2021, maybe 2022. Mm-hmm. I think I was 16 or 17 at the time. I know I was 17 because I had already came off of back surgery. So my pastor, after the following year, had talked to me, and he said, hey, I was interested in giving you a message at camp. And the big significance of a message at camp for me was I always saw these adult leaders who were, in their 30s and 40s, and a lot of them had, pastoral credentials on them. And that was a huge deal. I was like, I'm 17, do I have what it takes to stand in front of a crowd of my peers and people who are also not my peers? You get one take, right? Mm-hmm. And I got to go up there and give a message about something related to what the theme of camp is. And so the blessing that message was, it was about prayer, and I had a lot of time to prepare, and that week actually ended up going a little bit south for me because I got broken up with during that week of camp. So that was kind of a rough time. I mean, now that I look back on it, it wasn't that big a deal, right? Because we're young and, love isn't exactly in our life yet. But despite that hiccup, it was easily the best message I gave. So being a director to lead others and put so much responsibility on my shoulders at a young age was both a very big blessing, but also a very big challenge. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree. And would you say that these kids were in 6th or 7th grade?
Yes.
Would you agree, Quinten, that they were in 6th or 7th grade?
I would say so, yeah, around there.
Yep. Did you hear that throughout the trip a lot?
Very much so, and I also heard mustard.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm.
In what situations? Why would you be hearing mustard? What's that about? Tell us. Enlighten us on this subject.
Well, eventually later in the week, it became a problem because us counselors had a joke where we wrote an inside joke on a packet of mustard, and then we'd pass it off to each other. It was like a secret pigeon messaging system with a packet of mustard. And then eventually the kids caught wind of that, and then they just started throwing mustard packets at people. So kind of have, they were 6th and 7th graders, so they're very impressionable.
Right.
So if they see bigger kids playing with a mustard packet, they're gonna take it out of hand.
Right. I mean, beforehand, you might have thought that the 6-7 meme was kind of funny, but I mean, once you went to camp, do you kind of get PTSD every time you hear 6-7?
Yeah, very much so, because they, believe it or not, used our memes like Skibbity Toilet, Grimace Shake. Our kids in our cabin were throwing a minion, and they were...
I mean, you can't expect much from, brain-rotted children. It's just how
I
it
mean,
goes.
yeah, they were surprised that I knew their memes, and I scared them. Wow. They asked me, they're like, do you know who Minion is? I'm like, tonight we steal the moon. And then they all applauded.
Oh, I mean, that's our generation's movie, though. What are they talking about?
I don't know. It just surprised me that our stuff was still holding up.
I know. Did you encounter any memes like this? And especially when you get with middle schoolers, Isaiah, and elementary schoolers, where we a lot of us that are online or on Instagram, we have a grasp on the memes, or we kind of know what it is. And even though we're oh, that's kind of weird, or oh, nobody cares about Skibbity Toilet or whatever that is, right? But when you're at a camp like this, especially with younger kids, where they don't have that type of maturity where they can be yeah, that's weird, or you're yeah, I know what that is, but I don't want to say that. But instead, you just insist on blabbering it over and over. Did you have an experience like that? Did you hear 6-7 a lot? Did you have a mustard experience?
I had a couple similar inside jokes. My favorite one that we did a couple years ago was you lost the game. So someone would yell out, "I lost the game," and of course that starts everything. And now Quentin's getting mad at me because he lost the game.
Darn it, bro.
But like you said, that there was some little inside jokes that the kids wouldn't. Once they heard it, they just kept repeating it over and over again. So I always try to encourage people as a leader, hey, maybe we shouldn't start these. And I think Quentin has now learned the lesson on once you start something, the kids will imitate what you do. And that just holds the power and significance of what I love about summer camp the most is the leadership ability, like the ability to, yes, you're young, but you have an opportunity to step up and to get right there in the moment and start leading these kids to a better path. Because that's what the healthy balance of summer camp also is the ability to laugh and to have fun, to be on the activities, because a lot of our activities are like paintball, blob. There is a low ropes and high ropes course for them to challenge their fear of heights for some of these kids. There's an ability to, have worship as well. There's some serious moments and there's some funny moments. And I think it just becomes from strangers to family. And that's a really, really special bond that only takes place at summer camp.
Right. Absolutely. And I was just at a family camp where I kind of got something similar to you, where you're talking about the mustard packets and how that was kind of a thing, an inside joke with the counselors. And then once the kids got in control of it, it just got out of hand, where recently there's been this popular video going around where this guy's like, oh, you're talking about the compact disc, a.k.a. the CD, right? And I know you know this video, Quentin.
I do.
But when, it ends up being, a funny joke, and he's like, really? It's like a really weird way to say really. And so at family camp, we were, in the back during this, dating show, and, anytime, they would say something, we go, really? Or, it was just really funny. But then the little kids start hearing it, and then the second we went out of that building, the little kids were just running around late at night just going, really, really, really? And it just wrecked it that I had a little kid come up to me and go, present them. And it's just so funny because it's it really ruins it, but it's also oh no, what have we created? What did we start here? Quentin?
Yeah, to delve a little bit away from that, I agree with because the one thing we were taught was you are being watched 24/7. Because summer camp was a really interesting experience for me because this was my first year doing it.
Right.
And I've done things that I've never had to do. I've never had to watch 6 or 7 middle schoolers. They were young kids. I never babysat to get money. I don't have any siblings, so I don't really know how that was. But it was definitely an experience. There's a lot of stuff that happened that we don't have time really to get into, but that Isaiah talked about, what makes summer camp special is bonding.
Right.
At the very last night, I'm pretty sure Isaiah had this at his summer camps that he went to in previous years, but on the final night, we had a campfire night where we burned note cards, because the kids earlier on in the week did another, a cross thing like I did during a mission trip. And that last night, they took their note cards that they gave to God, and they burned them all in sort of a symbolic moment. And it was such a special thing. We were roasting marshmallows, and then afterwards, one of the band members brought out a guitar, and we were all singing around the campfire, arm in arm. It was a really special moment. And one of my kids, my counselors, my kids, came up to me, and he hugged me and said, I love you and I don't want to leave.
Really?
I didn't really think I made an impact on these kids, and I was really worried that I did, because this has been my first year counseling.
Right.
And when I heard that and he was hugging me, I almost burst into tears. It was just hearing that from a kid, hearing that I impacted him so much. And since I never had the experience to do that as a kid, it felt really nice that I was at that camp to do that.
And, geez, that's really inspiring. And, I mean, of course, you said you hadn't had that experience, but, I mean, I've had camps in the past that weren't necessarily church camps where I still remember those counselors. And they sort of don't go away, where you remember, those great memories. And as you said, that kid said, he didn't want to leave. That really is, really heart-wrenching. And, I mean, hopefully you'll see him again if you become a counselor again. I mean, hopefully. But, man, that sucks. But, I mean, it's easy to say that once it's all over. But, once you, sook back and you have all those memories to think back on of your cabin of 6 or 7, cabin members. That sounds like a really sweet moment. Did you have any Isaiah, did you have any moments like that where you, really got attached to campers, or campers really got attached to you, and you ended up just going away like very sad, but then ended up turning around and be like, man, like the memories will carry on forever?
Yeah, when I was a worship leader, this is one of those times of the year where I don't want to say the words appreciation, but when you get to lead the worship, and like Quinten mentioned earlier, my favorite memories of camp that give me chills when I think about it is looking out into the audience, knowing that people are closing their eyes, they're arm in arm, their hands are up, and just hearing this very loud but amazing collective group of voices worshiping God. And when I especially had a very big role in leading those songs, being the main singer for that song or a couple of songs, to me, I felt so at peace. And I'm not someone who has experienced a lot of peace in my life or a lot of happy moments, but for me to really experience that then, it just renewed my spirit. And I think it was amazing to see. I had those certain campers who would come up to me and they just really connected to whatever message I gave or whatever particular voice, which mine so happened to be the one that stood out to them. I think it was just an absolute privilege to, yes, I know the week's going to come to an end, but I'm going to enjoy it while I'm here.
Right.
And I cannot be more thankful that we are there in place of the parent. That's part of our training, is in locos parentes. And for me, that's a very amazing opportunity, as always, to just let these kids just love on you. And sometimes this is the first love that these kids are really getting, both for God and for themselves. So for you to be in that role, to see, in some ways, maybe your younger self being like, hey, that this is the stepping stones to bigger opportunities in life later down the line. You know what I mean? Like, if you have this ability to bring your kid or a kid to summer camp, then that's a fantastic opportunity.
Oh, 100%. And I mean, you both had very similar experiences, I would imagine, and just being a camp counselor just really seems like it could really impact you. Do you have any more to add on that subject, Quinten?
Yeah, one of the biggest points that I'd like to touch on is this one kid, the same kid that ran up to me at the end of the week, said, like, I don't want to leave. Mm-hmm. It was earlier on in the week, and he had asked me when we were walking back to the cabin after worship, he had asked me if he could talk to an adult about something. And he then proceeded to tell me about a lot of issues he had at home and, like, stuff that, like, if you were there at the camp, he was just the sweetest kid. He loved everybody. He was so funny. And, like, of course I had to report it since we're in place of the parents and, like, we have to be careful of anything that happens with these kids.
Right.
And the very next day they told him, like, because they needed to, like, question him about stuff because, and one of the directors, like, higher up staff in charge of the whole camp, told him that I was the one who reported it. And I was really scared, wondering that, will this kid hate me for telling kids that he had bad stuff going on? He then said, thank you. I was praying that this would be fixed. And I was in disbelief. I told him afterwards that God put me here at this camp being a counselor for a reason, and he put you here for a reason.
Right.
And he's like, thank you. I prayed for this. I thank you for answering my prayers.
Really?
And I'm like, it wasn't me who did it. It was God. And I feel like that moment was probably the biggest during that week, because that showed him that God really does care. And maybe if I wasn't there, that never would have happened. You never know.
Right.
But he just trusted me enough to tell me that, and it was just such a sweet moment.
Wow, that's insane. And the fact that you were worrying like that, and then not only did he embrace it, but then, like you said, that was the same kid on the last day that said, like, man, like, I don't want to leave. I mean, that sounds really powerful. And I had said that was really powerful earlier, but once you get more of the backstory and you really realize that sort of, like, connection that you guys had built up where, you didn't even realize you were doing him a service. You were worried. You're like, oh, I don't want him to hate me, or, like, because you never want your cabin mates to, see you in a negative light. And so to come forward like that must have been tricky, but you knew it was the right thing to do. And the fact that he embraced it and, like, really realized and, everything that it ended up doing for him, which there's a lot of stuff we can't get into on the podcast, but I mean, it just sounds really inspiring. It's great that you were able to impact his life like that.
Yeah, I would highly recommend to anyone who is listening, either go to camp if you are still in that age range too, or really volunteer your time, because I would say out of all the trips I've been on, that trip has definitely helped me. Right. Because in the Bible, it also talks about being the voice of God and spreading Christianity to others. And there's a couple kids in my cabin who said this was their very first church camp.
Really?
And by the end of the week, everybody was crying at the final day. It was such a sad day, but I feel like that I did what I was called to camp to do, and I would be very eager and excited to come back for future years.
Yeah, and it really sounds like you guys had a great time at Camp Adventure, where we're kind of at that age where we're starting to elevate, where we're not campers anymore. We're counselors, and, we're not being affected by these counselors, but, like, we are the people that these kids are, getting these, like, I mean, the stories that you just shared were just really inspiring, and then the stories that Isaiah has as well, just being counselors, is so incredible. And not only did you guys do that, but you also had that mission trip that we talked about earlier, but then you also had a very interesting canoe trip that you had in the middle of it as well. How did that one go as well this past summer, and throughout the years? How has it been for you, Isaiah?
The third and final trip we do each year is a canoe trip, and it's to the Boundary Waters in Ely, Minnesota, through the Williams and Hall Outfitters. I highly recommend anyone that gets a chance to check them out. It is the summary that is always given to me is I call it a spiritual nature retreat. So it is a way for us to go camping out in the woods. We portage and canoe from each little island to island, and they have a little bit of campsites on them. Each campsite's very simple. It's got a fire pit to cook your food in, and then it's got a grumper for you to go do your business in, and then the rest of the island's kind of just there for you to enjoy. Some are bigger than others. Some have counselors, or not counselors, I'm sorry.
Did you have some to add on that grumper, Quinten?
Yeah, so what a grumper is, Isaiah, this was also my first canoe trip, and Isaiah had told me tales of the mysterious grumper. He never gave me details because he wanted me to be surprised. So when I got there, whenever you wanted to do your business, not pee, because you could just do that anywhere. You're out in the woods. But when you had to go number 2, you had to walk out in the woods because, there are bears, animals. You didn't want them.
Grumper, yeah.
You had to walk out all the way in the woods where, there's bugs.
Yeah,
but
go, yeah.
You sit down on that grumper, and sometimes the grumper was full because it's just a hole in the ground with what looks like a toilet lid on it. And there's so many mosquitoes out there because it's, you're on a lake.
Right.
And I came back from my first time using the grumper. I'm like, Isaiah, it smells. My arms got bitten up by mosquitoes. And Isaiah looked me dead in the eye and said, that is one of the best grumpers we've ever had. And I looked at him, and my mouth just dropped.
Really?
Yeah.
Gosh. It's like, did it smell bad? It's like, does a bear crap in the woods? Did you see any bear feces?
Sadly, no. Sadly, no.
Sadly?
I wanted to see a bear. That would have been cool.
The feces?
No, not the feces. A bear.
I said that's what I said.
Well,
sadly, no. Quinn, sorry. Anyways, Isaiah, obviously you've had a lot of, trials and tribulations with the grumper, and I've seen the best and the worst parts of this. How was that, or whatever you wanted to add, actually? We don't have to talk about the grumper.
Well, let me put a closing to this supposed poop joke you guys created. The grumper, and the reason I mentioned it was the best conditions possible is because it was a very deep hole. So let me just paint the picture. It's a porta potty without the actual porta potty structure. It's a big hole in the ground, and let me just say,
were there walls around it?
No, it's very much in the open.
You're
so that's
out in the wilderness.
Yeah. So if anyone were to walk up the trail to see you, congrats, you got to get to know your homie a little more. But the reason I said it was good was because it was in a relatively open area, not a lot of bugs because it was up on a little higher elevation.
Quinn seems to disagree.
I know Quinn's disagreeing, but it's his first experience, so I know if to him anything is going to be bad.
There were plenty of bugs, Isaiah.
Okay, I know, but my point is it was a hole that was dug very nicely. There was hardly any kind of waste in there. So the point of this trip, of course, is not to talk about the potty situation. What I loved most about this trip was the amazing views that we got to have. When we're canoeing from island to island each and every day, we saw, Quentin remembers this, a seagull ended up eating the fish that we caught because we caught a walleye, and it was a really good size, but it was too late in the evening to cook it. So we were taking pictures with it or whatever, and we lost track of time, and this fish died. So we tried to put it back in the water, and it kind of was just bobbing. It was not swimming away. So they did like this wannabe Viking send-off and shoved it out into the shore. And eventually a seagull came along and started eating it, right? And then a really cool moment happened where a younger bald eagle, because bald eagles don't get their white feathers till a couple years of age. So this was a young one. It had just the brown feathers. And it was perched up in a tree, and it just stalked this seagull for like an hour straight as it's eating it. And it was just one of God's beauties. I mean, I know that there was probably some actual behavior going on that we didn't know about.
Right.
But just to be up close, I'm talking like maybe 100 feet away, was just a bald eagle sitting in a tree. And for us to be able to take some pictures of it and get to bond with one another, the fellowship of this trip was one of my favorites because we get to be away from our technology. We get to rough it out, which I know isn't everyone's favorite thing. But when you can really get out there in God's beauty and challenge yourself physically and mentally and spiritually to see what else is out there besides the modern cities and the TVs and the TikTok, all that fun stuff, I think it's
TikTok.
Yes, of course. I think it's a amazing experience. And I know Quentin had a little bit of a rougher time, didn't you, Quentin?
Yeah, very much so, because I'm not really an outdoorsy guy. I mean, I like hiking and like nature parks and stuff. Like, I think that's cool, but like this is out there. Like, you're literally out there in the wilderness, and the skeeters out there, they loved my blood for some reason. I got the most mosquito bites out of anybody. But looking past all of that, it was a really beautiful area. There is nothing like that where we live.
Really?
And something that I thought was really cool that you really can't do here, more or less any state. There are certain parts when you're out there on the lake and you can just put your water bottle next to you in the water and it is pure, clean drinking water. And it tastes more natural than like bottled water. Like, it doesn't taste processed. It is probably the freshest water I've ever had.
Really?
Yeah, Brian said it's higher concentrated and better quality. Like, basically, in other words, it's better for you and your health than most like refrigerated water because it's just so pure and.
Interesting.
It was
a filter?
No, so you just bob it like maybe less than a foot under the water, and while we're just canoeing, we just filled it up, and it was very
lake water.
If you go to the shoreline, though, of course, just for any future campers, don't go filling up by the shore. Make sure you go out a ways and check the lake first to make sure it's not. It is fresh water, not salt water, right?
You really don't have to filter it all. It's just that pure.
Yeah, it's very clean.
Really?
I'm not saying if you took a microscope to it, you'd see the clearness there, but I definitely, you could look at it and it would look like any other normal tap water.
Wow, that's very interesting. And Quentin, I mean, what was like your big takeaway from this canoe trip? And I mean, obviously the mission trip was great and everything that came to happen with that, with the families that you helped, and then obviously the children that you uplifted in Camp Adventure. What do you think was the big takeaway from this one, and how what has really influenced you in the future from that one?
So there were two main ones. Number one was to stop focusing on the bad things and to start focusing on the good things.
This is more of a personal issue then. Yeah. Okay,
I would say so, yeah. Like the first part at least. So I was getting eaten alive by the bugs. I was not having a good time, but whenever it was downtime and we were like just sitting there on the edge, because we camped on like little islands. Like, you're sitting there like on the edge just staring out into beauty. Like, it was early morning one day and you can just see the water reflecting. It almost looked like glass almost.
Really?
Like, it was really, really pretty. And the other thing that I took away was something I recommend that all people do is just get off your phone for a week, or see how long you can go. Test yourself. See how long you can go without it. Like, during the night, whenever we went into all of our tents to escape the bugs, normally when people lay down, they tend to scroll on social media for a while till they fall asleep. But no, we didn't have that. So we talked for hours. I laughed so hard because we had an inside joke where they thought, like, they tried to make me think I was schizo or something.
Really?
Like, it was so funny. And at the end of the week, when we got our phones back, it felt so weird to hold it. Like, I was holding it with, like, my hand, and I'm like, this feels weird. Like, it felt like it definitely affected me for the first couple days, but, like, later on, it just felt right to be off my phone for a little bit. Like, this is how God intended us to be.
Right. Yeah. Well, it certainly seems like these 3 trips and trips from the past have really influenced you guys and just really shaped who you are as Christians today and really gave you some new experiences and Christianhood, and not just from church and not just from Bible study or whatever it is, but to really feel the impact at different places in mission trips, really feel the impact from students at camps, really feel that personal growth at canoe trips. And I mean, just as a whole, how has this really affected you, and how would you recap all these trips, Isaiah?
I would say the impact is significant to my life and who I am. It really gave me a very open-minded perspective of both people's start of their journey, some of us who have done this before, and it also shows the potential you could have in the future. You know, you never know which opportunity God's going to throw your way next and which trip he's going to put you on and which kind of people you're going to impact. So I always ask that people take these trips in mind and be able to see and envision themselves doing them. You know, how can I make an impact in someone's life? With Camp Adventure, you know, being able to spread the word of God, I think that's really important when people of the middle school age, for example, were starting their faith journey for the first time. I think being able to be a leader for them and step up and take it with a very serious but also very charismatic perspective to just allow these kids to grow closer to God is amazing. I think for the mission trips, when you're being able to be the hands of God, as Quinten mentioned, and being able to do acts of service for those who have it less fortunate, and even for those who are fortunate, you know, I think it's also important to let everyone be involved if they can, and allow you to build a community, even if it's from the ground up. And I think last but not least for the canoe trip, being able to be reminded of God's beauty, whether that's through the sunsets that we saw, the animals and the nature that we don't have here in Indiana, being able to enjoy one another's fellowship and get away from the distractions of life, because we're very, very tied to those. I think that's just an amazing change. I think when you put them all together, that's a great summary of the trips. And I think for me, the impact is just the growth of my spiritual faith. And I hope everyone can experience that.
So I agree with all the things you said. If I told little Quinten that he would be, like, inspiring youth, going on mission trips to other states, going to almost Canada, I think he would be in disbelief. But if I had to give one piece of advice to, like, anybody, is just listen and trust God. I firmly believe those trips had an impact on my personality and my beliefs as who I am today. And I firmly recommend that if you are given the opportunity to experience these, I would say, once-in-a-lifetime trips, please take that chance and please encourage others to do the same. It will be one of the best decisions you will ever make in your life.
That's very well said, Quinten. Couldn't have said that better myself, and I think that really summarizes everything as a whole that we've gone into today. And as we're closing out this episode, and it's been a really great episode, by the way, and I really love getting into these mission trips because it really feels like this is such an impactful way to really, get to a new level of your Christian beliefs. I mean, how would you close this episode, Isaiah?
There's a scripture that comes to mind from James, and it just says, faith without actions is dead. And to me, I think all these trips are a great symbol of not only your Christian personality, but also of who you want to be in the future and the kind of people that you can impact from that.
Absolutely.
I wanted to close by also saying on behalf of me and Ben and Quinten for this episode, I just pray that everyone who's listening to this can really take away our lessons and our perspectives from this past summer and the summers before. I hope that can make an impact to you guys, and some of you guys can relate to this. Ben, on behalf of me and Quinten here for having us on the podcast again, I just want to say thank you very much, my friend.
Of course, man. Quinten, would you like to say anything before we wrap this up?
Yeah, I just want to say thanks for giving me an opportunity to spread my faith a little bit and maybe even if one person takes like something away from this, then
Right.
This was worth it. But thanks again for inviting me to be back on.
Of course, yeah, and I really appreciate you guys not only coming on once but coming back, and I just really appreciate you guys because I need as many people to get on this show as I can, and not only to have episodes like we've had, but like to really have these deep talks. I mean, in our first episode we just talked about movies and that was great, but like this is like, it was so deep and it was so meaningful, and I just really appreciate you guys on the show, man. So this has been a really awesome episode, and I really appreciate you guys for coming. Quinten and Isaiah.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, this has been the Ben Buzz, starring Benny King. Thanks for tuning in.